All right, hello and welcome everyone. My name is Stephen Krutzfeldt. I'm a pre-sales engineer here at CDI, and today I'm going to be taking you through today's webinar, which we'll be looking at quick fields. If at any point you have any questions come up, please post them into the chat box. I think there's a specific box on your little floating window specifically for questions. I'll be sure to take some time at the end of the webinar to go over and answer as many of those as possible. So today's topic is going to be around, didn't update this, quick fields. This is going to be for all Laserfiche users. Anyone who's interested in learning a little bit about quick fields, this is for you. To help you follow along, we're going to start by looking at a demonstration of what quick fields is, what it can do, and some of the main key parts that make it a valuable application. We'll then look at how we can create a quick field session. This is meant to be more of an overview, so we won't get too detailed into the step-by-step actions that it takes to create these from scratch. However, you should be able to walk away from this with a little stronger understanding about what the capabilities are, what the possibilities are. And if you would like help, feel free to reach out to the CDI team, and we would love to understand what you're trying to do and make quick fields work for you. And lastly, I'll go over some tips, some tricks, best practices that I've come up with over the past couple of years of using this. So to start things off, what is quick fields? In a nutshell, Laserfiche Quick Fields is an automated document capture solution that's able to identify, clean, retrieve information, fill out metadata. It can even rename documents, store it dynamically in a specific location in your Laserfiche repository. The best way to explain quick fields is it's something that can scan a document, automatically pull out pertinent information, and add that as metadata automatically. The purpose of this and the main value of quick fields is mainly to reduce the amount of time spent adding Laserfiche metadata to a document when this can do it automatically. So I'm not a big fan of PowerPoint. I'd rather jump into it and show you what we're working with. So I have one set up here, all ready to go. By the way, I don't know if you can see this icon in the bottom or not, but the, oops, that's not gonna work, is it? Sorry about that. The quick fields icon is gonna look something like this right here. There's also quick field scanning, but we're mainly gonna be focusing on the quick fields designer. So a couple different components to look at here. The main one is going to be up here in the left-hand corner. This is the tree where we actually build out the individual steps that quick fields is going to take to identify a document, recognize, oh, this document is a, in this case, IRA application. Once it knows what type of document it is, it'll then be able to go through, process, and look for specific fields on the document, such as address, city, state, username, things like that. You can also identify the last page as well. So if you're scanning in a large stack of documents, and some of them may be IRA applications, some of them may be something completely separate, invoices or something that don't matter. This will be able to pick them out, separate them, and only grab the information and assign it as metadata when it's applicable. So the idea is that we would scan it in, it would recognize these, and then assign our template and start assigning all these fields. So for demo purposes, this is what that would look like. Also know that when using quick fields, this can be something where you're scanning it directly in from a physical scanner, and quick fields will then go through, identify the document, and run all the processes we laid out. It can also monitor or scan from a network folder. But you've got a couple different options here as to where those documents originate from. So I'm just gonna go ahead and run this through so you can see a demonstration. And right now, this is actually just scanning from a network folder. It's just grabbing a folder I called IRA applications for demo purposes. But as you can see down here in the left-hand corner, it's running through, seeing those documents. If it's unidentified, it will put down here and say that this is not an IRA application. It's not one of the documents that I've been trained to recognize. But in this case, it recognized all of them, and we'll see what kind of information it pulled. So from this document, we can see that when scanned through, it identified it as a IRA application. It named it with the date automatically here. And that's just because I said to give it today's date when scanning. And it was also able to pull back first name, last name, middle name, social security number, and on down the line here. It was able to see that by reading each of these document fields. So Dwight, Kurt, Shrew. There's a social security number, birth date. Looks like all of these different fields. 9123 Beat Road. If we look at the next one, we can see the same thing, Jim Halpert. We can see that this is, there's no smoke and mirrors here because it looks like it tried to find a middle name and it found the letter I, likely because it accidentally grabbed one of these lines on either side of it. It's not 100%. That's also why it's important that someone do go through and verify these, make sure that these are correct. If it's not correct, you can always go in and update it as well. And lastly, here we see Michael Gary Scott, 444. It looks like it brought in everything exactly as it was supposed to. So if everything looks good, we can actually just right-click here and store the documents. And another piece of Quick Fields is telling it, once you've grabbed the information, what do you want to name the documents and where do you want to store it? So you don't need to build in any sort of workflow. If you do want to add workflow, that's an option. We can tell it to run a workflow right after, right before you store it, or make that part of processing. But in this case, I'm telling it to go into a client files folder, into the name of the client. In this case, it would be Jim Halpert, Michael Scott, and Dwight Schrute. And it'll be last name, comma, first name, and then the last four of the social security number. And so that has to do with how we would format our tokens. And I can show you how we did that too. So let's go ahead and find maybe Dwight Schrute. And it looks like it came through, but it didn't format our token correctly. But it did save it to Dwight Schrute. So we can take a look at that and figure out why that might be. And it went to investments, pending account openings, and there's our IRA application. So if we want to open that up, we can see that with all of its metadata there within Laserfiche. And if we go to Jim Halpert, same thing. It looks like it saved it to last name, comma, first name. But also, once again, we save it to pending account openings, IRA application there as well. So from a very high level, that's what Quick Fields is designed to do. It's designed to scan in a stack of documents, identify what kind of document it is, pull back pertinent information or metadata that is relevant to that document, assign it as metadata, and then save it to the correct location. So let's take a look at how we actually did this. Now I'm just going to go ahead and create a new blank session by just going File, New, Blank Session. Do I want to save this session? Sure, why not? So as we open it up, we'll see that we have just a lot of blank screens. Up the top left-hand corner, we've got Preclassification Processing and Classification. It's giving us a sample image, which really isn't going to offer you a lot of value except to show you that you should probably add a sample image. So the first step that I always go to is I identify my sample. And so we can go and replace this sample page by going to a replace the sample image. You can use a sample electronic document like a PDF or a Word doc if you want to use that. But usually I'm just going to import an image by browsing to it. We'll just use the exact same one that we looked at so you can see this process. So when you bring that in, one thing it's going to do is you now have two sample pages. There's the original one it started with, and then there's also this one. You may want to edit these a little bit because it will default back to the other one periodically. So just kind of be aware of that. But the next thing we're going to do is go through and start adding our different processes. And I like to think of this in order. I mean, the first thing we need to do is tell it how to identify the document, right? Like we need to know which document we're going to be working with. And so we need to add some sort of identifier. So if you right click on the Preclassification Processing, we can add a process that's just going to be called, I'm going to take a step back. Sorry about that. Preclassification Processing gives you a lot of different options to format the document in such a way that it's going to be easier to identify the different fields. And also, we may want to clean it up, brush it off, deskew it, etc. before we store it also. That way, when individuals are in Laserfiche browsing for these documents, they get a nice, clean, crisp, easy to read file to actually work with. So QuickFields offers a lot of different types of activities, I guess, that will help you to clean up the document a little bit. So some of the common ones here are color smoothing, which basically, I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like. If you have some colors that are a little grainier, maybe it's almost like speckled in a way, that can smooth it out. In the same vein, we also have despeckling, I believe. So if you do have those little black dots, you can despeckle it. What's nice about this too is that each one of these has its own little wizard. I don't know if you can see this down in my right-hand corner. It says next or skip wizard. If we go to next, we can identify the types of speckles that we expect to see on the document. So if they're larger or smaller or medium, depending on what's common, and this can happen for a range of reasons. 90% of the time, though, it has to do with just the scanner being a little bit dirty. And so you see consistently that documents are getting scanned in with speckles. You can either, I guess, find a way to clean the scanner, or you can just use this. Dragging and dropping is probably a little bit faster, but maybe not a good long-term fix. But if you're getting large or medium speckles, you can identify it as such. So the first thing it's going to do is take it in and just clean it up and despeckle the image. Maybe the next thing you want to do is, if they're not scanning in exactly at 90-degree angles, maybe they're a little bit skewed, you can deskew it as well. And so that'll take a document that's maybe off 10, 15 degrees, and it'll straighten it up. So now you have a little bit cleaner, despeckled and deskewed document. And this will do it for all of them. This is before it's even gone through and identified what kind of document it is. First thing it's doing is making it look a little bit nicer. Let's see what else. I gotta say, I don't use most of these, and you probably won't either. They won't all be necessary, but it's important to know that they're at least available. So the ability to identify the page size. So if you're going to be scanning in documents that aren't letter, they're not 11.5 by 8. Is that right? Maybe they're a little bit longer. Maybe it's legal size or something like that. Then you can identify it and say, hey, we're going to be scanning documents that are larger than normal. So you'll want to say, hey, make sure that you're looking at it in this way. So you can go through and adjust your page size. Instead of letter, 8.5 by 11, you can say, oh, all of these are going to be A6s. Or you can customize it too if you want to look at it that way. That's going to be really important, because I have seen a lot of clients who are trying to identify the different fields, and they say like, oh, it's not lining up correctly, like it doesn't understand where the fields are at. What could that be? A lot of times it has to do with the size of the document being a little bit off. It can also happen if it's an electronic document and you trained it based on like a TIFF or just an image file. If the two aren't aligned and they're not exact, that can cause issues as well. If you do have questions or have issues with the fields lining up, let us know. Our team's pretty good at getting to the bottom of the problem and fixing it. You can remove color also. So sometimes black and white's a little bit easier for it to read, a little bit easier to OCR and things like that. So inverting it to black and white is a good way to do that. Also, actually, I just said the word invert. If you do have a document that's largely black with a lot of white lettering, I would recommend using the invert tool. So what that'll do is turn everything black to white and vice versa. So then it's a little bit easier for the document, once again, to go through OCR and do all the things that are going to actually be necessary. And also resize, add stamps, OCR, text extraction, things like that. You've got a lot of different options here to play around with. So next, let's get into classification. This is where we're going to set up our actual document class. So the session as a whole is designed to have multiple different document types. Recently, I did one for invoices. This one company gets So of course, several invoices like anyone else would, but specifically there are 3 or 4 that they see pretty often, and they're always static, meaning that the text is always pretty much in the same place on the pages, at least the ones that they want. Things like vendor name, invoice number, purchase order number, date, total, things like that. That's a common example we've seen. However, if you want to stack that in and throw in 3 or 4 different types of invoices all at once, this is a good way for it to identify, break them all apart, and grab the information from different areas. One caveat, one thing I do have to say, this is only good for documents that are static, meaning that they don't change. This is going to be looking for fields that are in the same place on every single document. It's fantastic with standardized documents like the one that you just saw, which is a fidelity form. However, if you do have something where you expect the fields to change and things to be in different places each time you see it, it probably won't work the way you want it to. So I do have to add that disclaimer, so that way you're aware. So in this case, we're just going to call it count opening, IRA. And we'll go ahead and use just the standard wizard, the full wizard. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and use the full wizard. We'll take you through everything we have here. Some of the things that you'll need to know ahead of time: which server is this going to be on? Now, we have QuickFields installed on the same server that Laserfiche is on, so we can just point it at localhost. However, we do have multiple different repositories. I'm going to be working with the LF Financial repository, but you'll want to know which repository you're going to be sending the documents to, and also which server that repository resides on. If you're using Windows Authentication or Active Directory users, you can use Windows Authentication. In my case, I'm not, so I'm going to go ahead and just use my admin password. You can always validate, look for that success to make sure that you are in fact able to access it. And this is where we start to see our sample pages. Now here it comes with that default sample page, but you will want to add your own, because I'm not sure how much help it's going to be to tell it how to use this generic sample page to find your different fields. It's going to be very difficult. And I'm just going to import my image, my IRA sample. And from there, I'll just go ahead and delete this. I always, once I have my image, I go up to the sample one and I hit that X and just say, get out of here. We're not going to use you. We're not interested. Thanks anyway. Next, we can identify our template. And because we've authenticated it with the repository that we're looking at to use, it's also going to automatically bring in our templates from that repository. So account opening is the one that I used before. Volume, I usually just leave it at default. If you're not sure, then default's probably fine. Although you can also choose another volume in here, but default is probably the way to go. Next, we can tell it what we're going to name these documents. Good to give it a descriptive name always. And you can even use the token picker here. So we're expecting that by the end of this process, we're going to have a little bit more information about who this account opening form belongs to or who the client is. So maybe we want to use the last name or the social security number or something like that. Also, where do we want to save this? We can go in here and select the pathway that we want to use. In my case, I always go to the top, and then what I did was / means one more layer of folders, so client files, and then we're going to want to send it to our fields, to the last name, comma, and then first name, and then space / space. And I know this didn't work, but ultimately, let me show you how we could tell it to go to the last 4 of the social security number. Assuming we have a social security number that does come in, if you right click on this, and this is true for workflow, this is true for QuickFields, this is true for any time when you're working with a token selector, you can go into the token editor and tell it what to expect. So in here, I have a test social security number, and it's very possible that sometimes it has dashes and sometimes it doesn't. or sometimes it's missing a number. In fact, I'll bet the issue I'm running into is that the number of digits that I put in those social security numbers weren't correct, because that can break this. But if you have 9 digits all in a row and you only want the last 4 digits, there's a couple different ways to do this. You'll want to create a regular expression. Now, regular expressions are scary, I know. It takes a long time to get used to them, but let me just go ahead and give you a quick rundown of some common regular expressions. A period means the first digit. 2 periods means the first 2 digits, or letters, or anything. It can be letters, numbers, etc. A period means some sort of character. If you do a period and then a plus, that will give you everything in that string. So period plus means everything. If you hit a space, it means period up to a space. Obviously, there's no spaces, so it doesn't know what to do. The other ones that are common are backslash W or backslash D. That means 1 digit. If it's backslash D, that means it's looking for a number. So in this case, if we're looking for a social security number and we only want the last 4, one thing we could do is tell it that there are going to be 9 digits. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we add parentheses around the ones that we want. Oops. And the way I'm testing this is there's a click here to test token. So you put in your test value, your regular expression, it'll automatically show you what's coming out. So if you know you're going to have 9, the parentheses is what's going to be extracted. So what this means is that if I was to stop it right there, it would say that it's going to grab the social security number, but it's only going to keep the last 4. Now, most of the time, excuse me, the social security number is going to have dashes by it, right? If that's the case, that means that you're looking for 4 digits in a row, which you won't have on the first 3 or the next 2. So 99% of the time when I'm formatting to grab the last 4 of a social security number, I just do backslash D, backslash D, backslash D, backslash D, and it'll grab those last 4. So that is what I would write down, those of you watching at home. Last 4 of social security is, let's go through that process one more time. We right click on our token. Well, first of all, we select our token using the token selector. And one thing you can do is go to the token dialog. That's actually a lot more helpful because that opens it up here. So then you can say, all right, I want to grab at this point social security number. I want to apply a regular expression. Backslash D 4 times, so that's 4 digits in a row. And the only time there's going to be 4 digits in a row, if there are dashes, is going to be these. And so that's what it would look like. And then you would hit OK, and then it would send it to the last 4. Now, if you have all the digits all in a row, then it's going to be more helpful to use what we saw before. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's just going to grab the first 4 digits because there are 4 in a row. So that's the case where you would want to maybe do 9 dots or do 9 backslashes or what have you. Another option would be to do, I think, backslash D and then curly brackets 4, and then I think it's like the $sign or something like that. Nope, on the other side. And that'll grab the last 4. So the $sign means start from the other side. Curly brackets 4 means grab 4 of whatever you have here. So backslash D means grab 4 numbers at the end. So if you are following along at home, you want to write down that one also. It's just another way. This is one of those things where all, no, that's not true. I was going to say all roads lead to Rome, but no, there are only very specific, very difficult to remember roads that can get you to Rome if you have a guide, essentially. So no, horrible analogy. Let's just say that there are several ways to skin a cat. Maybe that one will work a little bit better. More than one ways to skin a cat. By the way, if you know where that came from, send me an email. Let me know. I'd love to know about it, love to hear about it, love to talk about it. Anyway, we're we're getting distracted from quick fields now. This is what we want the document to be named. This is where we want it to go. And if you want to go even deeper here, we could add another backslash. They'll say another level down. So I think I was sending it to like an account opening subfolder, but this is where you would add your subfolders. Backslash for each one you want to go to. I hope that makes sense. If you're a little confused, let us know. Reach out to our team. We'll talk you through it. So if we're all ready to go, this is what it's retaining, and we can hit finish. So then we have that first classification of account opening IRA. If we wanted to add more, we could right-click on classification and say we want a second document class. You can go to the standard wizard, and this one would maybe be account opening, and maybe this one would be like a business or something like that, and then on down the road. So we could have multiple different document types. So for each one, you'll notice that it opened up and it's asking for first page identification, page processing, last page identification, and post-processing. So what to do once it's all done. So number one here, it's automatically going to go through the pre-classification processing. So it's always going to despeckle first and then deskew. And then it's going to try and identify this. So this is where we need to tell, like, all right, how do we know that it's an IRA application? So you have to scan this with your eyes and say, all right, what would be a good way to identify that this is an IRA application? Sometimes it's kind of like, where's Waldo? What could possibly be an identifying field? I don't know about you guys at home, but I'm looking at this. I think that's a pretty good indicator. Sorry, I'm being sarcastic. It's just I feel like it's coming off as condescending. So anyway, the bottom line is what we want to do is we basically want to tell it like, hey, if you see IRA application up here at the heading, classify it as such. So what we do is we're going to right click here. We're going to add our process. And there's two different processes that I've used. My favorite one is the Zone OCR, OmniPage Zone OCR. This is going to be your best friend. I was so confused. I got with one client who had QuickFields, but they had a limited package and they didn't have the Zone OCR. And I'm like, I don't even know what to do with this. There are ways to work around and get it working, but if you're looking to really utilize QuickFields to its full potential, I 100% recommend paying whatever the extra amount is just to get that OmniPage Zone OCR, because it's an amazing tool. I'll show you why. So once it's despeckled, deskewed, and we know what size page it is and everything like that, we can tell it, hey, look at, I don't know, all of, oops, sorry about that. Did not click. Hope you're not getting dizzy. Come on. There we go. So we can grab our zone, move it around. And if you want to say, like, if you find something right here, specifically in the space that says IRA application, that's a good way to do it. But what's great about the Zone OCR is that you can also just make it pretty massive and say, read all this. And if it contains IRA application somewhere, because hypothetically, this would be the only document that would have that written there, you could say, down here, if we can skip our wizard, or we can go to next, region selection. We have our zone here. I'm going to call it ID, or maybe ID_1. There's advanced options also, things looking like confidence, things like that. But the next one, step 3 of 6 here, is to add the identification condition. So what we can do is say identification condition ID1, which is what we named that big box, not equals, but contains. And you could say IRA application. Okay. So now it's saying that it's going to look inside this box, and if it finds the words IRA application anywhere, it's going to go down here and it's going to identify it as an IRA application. So now we know what kind of document it is. So then we can go into page processing. So with page processing, we can add some processes. Once again, it's going to give us all the options. Most of these you probably won't need because you're going to want to put those up in the pre-classification. So you're going to want to, if you're going to remove color, remove it at the beginning. Deskew, despeckle, do all of that before you get into processing the page. The main things that I use here, maybe some pattern matching, like we just saw with the social security number, but mainly it's going to be that Zone OCR again. So right-click on page processing, Zone OCR, and it's going to ask you to name the process just so it's identifiable. Sometimes I just call it zones, so that way I know what I'm talking about. Like it's just a way for me to separate it from page ID to zones. So sometimes I'll go up here and I'll just call this one page ID. It doesn't do anything though. It just it's a little bit easier. It has those breadcrumbs to help you follow along with what you're doing. So here we can go ahead and tell it which page range we want to look at. Do we want to try to grab these on every single page? Well, no, probably not. It defaults to page 1, but if you want to say, all right, once you've identified page 1, make sure you can also identify page 2. Page 2 will always contain different fields, so you can set those up also. So from here, we would go ahead and drag our zone. Oops, drag our zone. Maybe the first thing I want is going to be first name. So all you have to do is drag it out here, tighten it up. Say we're going to be looking for first name. So over here, we have our first zone, and it didn't rename it. So we want to make sure that we can identify which one it is. First name. It automatically changed the top, the left, things like that. If you want to tighten it up, one thing you can do is adjust that a little bit. Yeah, dragging the fields, the boxes side by side are a lot easier, but you can type it in hard coded here if you want. The other thing we have down here is optimization style. Do you want to go with speed? Do you want to go balance? Or do you want to go accuracy? I recommend balance. Accuracy is the best, but it does take longer to process. So depending on how many documents you have and how patient you are. Balance is kind of right there in the middle. So you can always test the process, although all it would do right now is just test it on this document, and so it wouldn't pull anything back. So if nothing comes back, then we would know it works correctly. If it comes back with like a 1 or an I, then we would know that, oh, so it did it. Down here it says it came back with an I. So what that tells me is I should probably adjust it on either side. Test again. Came back with nothing. Good. That means it's probably reading it in the right area. So another good thing about this is if you're identifying your first page and telling it when you find, this IRA application that's your first page, don't, just process everything and group all the pages together until you find another document that says IRA application on the top or in the middle. Now, of course, be aware if your second page says IRA application somewhere at the very top, this isn't going to work. You'll need to come up with something that is more specific to this. Maybe Premier Select IRA application. So you'll have to be a little bit aware of what you're trying to grab. But once we have this, and if you wanted to, if you have multiple pages, you can always identify your last page also by saying, once again, this specific zone will say IRA application or document over, or maybe more commonly is usually like a signature pane. So it says sign here or something like that. That'll be a good identifier. Although another option we have for the identification is, where are we at here? Form identification. And so this is one where it's a little more straightforward and possibly more accurate. Kind of depends on the document. But if we go through to the next piece, it'll ask us to just basically import an image. That'll be the first page. Oops, not scan an image, import an image. So I can say this is my first page, this is the sample of that. And so that's going to say that, all right, if it looks like this, then that means it's our first page. So you can go to the confidence. So if you're 75% at least confident that this is the same document, go for it. Or you can also say only if it's 90%. The reason I would stay away from 90% is, the document's going to look the same, but the fields are going to be different. And if the document is, if it's OCRing this ahead of time and it's looking to get its cues from the text, well, the text is going to change on each one. So you really want to probably keep it closer to 75%. I want to say there's one other piece. Accuracy, speed, yes. Here we go. So on the last one, on step 6 of 6 here, do you want to align the master by lines or by text? Now, one thing you could do, and I have seen this work. Of course, I've seen it work with the Zone OCR stuff too. So once again, these are different cats that we're skinning now, poor cats. You can align the master form by lines or by text. And so if we take off the text, then that means, don't read it. We're just looking for lines. So then it's like looking like Legos. If you see this many blocks in a row and you see a line here, then that's a IRA application. So that could be an option too. Main takeaway here, if you try one option and it's not identifying it correctly, or it doesn't seem to be looking at the document and seeing an IRA application, maybe try the form identification. Maybe try it with only lines and without text. That'd be a good way to test it. Maybe use both. Send it through a couple different steps to make sure that we are 100% sure this is, in fact, an IRA application. And lastly, post-processing. I don't usually do a lot with post-processing. The only time that I would use anything here would be maybe maybe that's where we would add the stamp. Maybe we would take out some pages. If you wanted to change some of your tokens around, so there's a token collector here and a token retriever, things like that. All that means is it's going to take some of the data and cross-reference it. So one thing you can also do is say, hey, if you found this token, make sure that you then add this specific field. Oftentimes, I guess the most common way of using that is if you want to have some sort of GL code or something like that, some sort of reference or option, that'd be one way to look at it. But that's where things to try and get a little bit more detailed, and your specific situation is going to be unique, and so we would have to talk through that. But just know that this can be a very robust tool. And what I'm trying to convey today are just some of the highlights and what we see most commonly when people are using this. So once all of this is done, we would just go through and tell it where we want to scan from. You can right-click, sorry, not right-click. You can click on this and identify where you want your documents to originate from. I usually take them from a local folder because I don't have a scanner in my little office at home. That's a lie. I do. I don't have it hooked up to this machine though. Also, you can give it some rules about, if it's a PDF, if we want to do anything with this, if we want to generate Laserfiche pages, things like that. Post-processing, when you're done bringing it from this location, do you want to delete it because now it's in Laserfiche, or do you want to just simply have it move to a processed folder or something like that? So a couple different options there. It also remembers. So more commonly, I would just go up here and say, look, go to my folder, go to my IRA applications, and only scan in JPEGs or TIFFs or PDFs. That's another thing. It's not super great at recognizing every single format of documents. Try and stick with BMPs, JPEGs, TIFFs, and PDFs. There are options outside of that, but it gets a little bit more finicky. So just kind of be aware of that also. So usually I just go with like BMPs. So we're going to save it as a demo session. And then we can scan and just see what it does. Oh, you know what, one thing I forgot to talk about. Once you are identifying the different zones, so once we've gone to, we have first name, we could also add another one here and call that one, last name. Drag it down over our last name, size it up, call it last name, save. Then we want to go back up to the account opening document here, and that's where our templates are at. So once we're identifying those, then we need to go in and use our token selector. So just for those of you following along, underneath classification will be your different document types. And it's at that level that your the document rename, document store location, and template information is being stored. So this is where we would go in and say, pick our token from zones, first name is first name, token selector, zones, last name equals last name. You get those lined up. And then always save. Always be saving. So then if we wanted to, we could try and scan again. I don't know if anything's actually gonna come through. Do I have anything in this location? Here's some JPEGs. So down here, it's telling us waiting for pages. So we're getting some documents coming in now. We'll see if this actually worked. I don't know if I necessarily lined these up correctly. Yeah, so it's confused. So there's a little bit more work to do there, but that's, I mean, for the most part, that's exactly what we'd expect. You saw at the beginning how it would bring it in and identify the first name, middle name, last name, etc. So that would be the basic introduction to Quick Fields. If you have any questions or want to learn more about Quick Fields, I would recommend you go and look at some of the Laserfiche answers. Although, honestly, nobody ever goes to Laserfiche answers. What happens is you Google something about Laserfiche, and the top answer is always from Laserfiche answers. It's a community forum where people come together, ask Laserfiche questions. There's always someone on there who's probably asked the question before. If it's a new one, somebody usually gets back to you within an hour or so. It's an incredible resource. I use it all the time. Also, the Lucid Exchange is an area where you can download a lot of different white papers or just basic information about the different Laserfiche applications, best practices, new releases, a lot of information out there as well. And of course, my personal favorite, our YouTube channel, which is where this video will be posted probably by the end of the week. So if you want to go back, review, pause, rewind, take screenshots, do any of that, you should be able to find it on youtube.com/user/Cities Digital. Like and subscribe, I believe is what they say. Also, if you'd like to have our team assist you in setting it up, deploying it, maybe you just want an extra set of eyes and ears to learn about your process and offer some assistance, how would you recommend doing this? Reach out to us, consulting@citiesdigital.com or sales@citiesdigital.com. If you maybe you don't have Quick Fields yet, but you're looking at getting it, if you want to get a price quote, what that entails, what that deal looks like, reach out, let us know. We'd be more than happy to get with you and answer your questions. And with that, thanks for tuning in. I can answer any questions you have now. All right. Wow, this is really difficult to read. Hang on just 1 second. Here we go. All right, what about pages with slightly different margins? That's going to happen for printers with slightly off alignment. If the image is slightly up or down relative to the template, can the program adapt? Short answer is yes. That long library of options is designed for specifically instances like that. One of the things that we can do is basically identify anchor text. So say that, all right, in the top left-hand corner in this area, we need to have, it should look like this, or should have this text here. And so that could be our original. So that will then become how to center it. And then you would identify the different fields based off that anchor, off that setting. So yeah, they've done some work on this in the past, and that was a common issue in the beginning that, half an inch off here and there was causing problems. So they're like, all right, well, what if we do this? Identify the text, identify the field, identify corners, sizes, things like that, we'll get there. We'll calibrate it. It might take a couple minutes, but the capability is there. Good question. Any other questions? Post them into the question box. Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Joseph. Another thing we love doing, if you have some documents that you're not sure, maybe this is a good candidate for quick fields, but you want to know for sure, let us know. That's one of my favorite parts of this job, is coming up with proof of concept. So send me your documents. I'll take some time, run them through, build out a basic quick field session to say, yeah, look at this. We've got 20 of them and all 20 came through and identified. Or I'll be like, oh, nope, these are a mess. This isn't going to work. And then and then and you don't have to worry about it anymore. Thanks, guys. Is QuickFields a better tool than Workflow if you had to choose? I would say it's like anything else with the toolbox. Is a saw better than a hammer? Well, hammers are great for nails. Saws are great for making wood smaller. Hammer's not necessarily better for that. So it depends on what the situation is. I think that Workflow is an amazing tool. I definitely I'd say 80-20. I use Workflow 80% of the time, and QuickFields 20% of the time, but it really depends on what I'm trying to accomplish. There are options where Workflow can extract text and then isolate some of the text and actually do pretty much the exact same thing that QuickFields does, although it's not going to be quite as accurate. So I guess at the end of the day, I would need to see what it is you're trying to accomplish. What is the end goal? What is that, like, what does the perfect end situation look like? And then we could then decide, is QuickFields going to be the best way to get there, or can Workflow get there? But I mean, long-winded way to say Workflow's a better tool because it's more universal, be used for a lot of different things, but QuickFields is probably better for extracting data from specific documents. I'm sure there have been, I'm sure there will be webinars on workflows coming down. Always talking about workflows. I'm actually still in the process of putting together the 2021 list of events and webinars, so I can certainly work that into it. Usually when I talk about workflows, the most common one is autofile workflows, and there might be one on our YouTube channel. I would take a look at that. Just jump on that, where is it? User/Cities Digital, or if you just look up Cities Digital or CDI or Laserfiche videos by CDI or something like that, you should be able to find it. But then specifically workflow, I know there's a few out there. Some around like automatically filling out Word docs or PDFs. I think there's a couple on auto files, but there's a couple out there. If there is a specific workflow that you'd like to learn about, something that could be universal, obviously workflows are another one of those where everyone's is a little bit different because everyone's repository is a little bit different, everyone's templates look a little bit different, but there are certain universal rules where everyone can get something out of it. So things like accounts payable or common HR, onboarding, things like that. That's one that we'll be looking at down the road and try and incorporate forms along with workflow and try to show how we can tie it all in together. But yeah, if you continue to show up to these, there's definitely going to be some on workflow. Is there a cheat sheet or most used formatting how-tos? Sorry, what's the rest of that? Oh, for the pattern matching. Yes, there is, but it's actually just online. It's like an admin user guide specific to specifically what you're talking about is regular expressions. Let me see if I can get that and post that into the chat. Just 1 second. You guys are laughing so at my toolbar because I'm like, all right, I know it has a Laserfiche icon by it, and then I look at my toolbar and it's just like 12 Laserfiche icons right next to each other. LF help, that's the one. And specifically, like way to differentiate Laserfiche, come on. All right, we want specifically regular expressions. Okay, here we go. Can I put this in chat? All right, did you see that in the chat? Like a chat box, not the question box. Maybe I'll put in the question box also, so everybody has it. That work? Send to all. So that's a good starting point. Best way to learn regular expressions though, just play around with it. I love that little test my regular expression box. I even had a situation recently where I spent like an hour just trying to isolate a path where we were converting legacy documents from a network folder, and we were using import agents, and we were assigning the original path as a metadata field called legacy path, and we needed to grab just like 2 folders out of there, but the number of folders changed all the time, so grabbing 2 out of the middle was extremely difficult, but eventually we ended up being able to do it with regular expressions. So it's super powerful if you know what you're doing, or if you have time to just beat your head against the wall and try different variations. But yeah, it's a cool feature. All right, well, if there are no more questions, then I will let you guys get back to your day. Thanks again so much for sitting in on this. I had fun. I hope you guys did too. And join us. I actually have another webinar coming up in a couple weeks. So tune in, keep an eye out for these. You have a couple of webinars that you'd like to see, shoot us an email, let us know, and I'll be more than happy to put it on the docket. Thanks, everybody.